Have on Frank Figliuzzi, served the assistant director for counterintelligence at the FBI over 25 years there. He directed all espionage investigations, also is an author of various books, including Long Haul, and his Substack is very popular. It's growing all the time. thefrankfigliuzzi.substack.com. Frank, nice to see you. Thanks for making time, especially on this big day with the bomber arrest, and try to make sense of it for us. But nice to see you.
If we're not careful, people will think we planned this to coincide with the announcement of the pipe bomb arrest, and we'll let them think that.
Well, people don't know that you were actually booked yesterday for the show, and then the news happened, because it would be expected that, like on a newsy type of show, you'd be like, okay, you're going to bring in an FBI guy to talk about this. But we do you want to just talk about things in general about what's going on? So try to help us make sense of it. FBI arrests a guy named Brian Cole Jr., 30 years old. And it was for 2 bombs he placed almost 5 years ago, one outside the DNC, one outside the RNC. There was video of him and nothing. And now they said there was no new evidence. They just got the guys. So what do you make of this?
Yeah. And so, look, my first macro level takeaway on this is sadness that the public, I'm watching what's happening on social media, right? The public is already so lacking in faith and trust in the Bureau and in the DOJ that they don't know what to make of this. And so
Right.
that's the saddest takeaway of all, is that's where we are, that nothing coming out of this administration is easily accepted, even when it's seemingly very good news that a bomber who could have injured and killed people has allegedly now been charged and now has been taken into custody. So I'll give every credit to the agents at Washington Field Office and their leadership if indeed this has been done in a fashion that leads to a successful conviction. I have to tell you now, there's always a comma, right? The comma, watching that press conference today, Dean, which was like watching middle school kids who have just won their first soccer game, was painful, meaning there's lots of raised voices and shouting. I don't know why, but it reminds me of very nervous people. You know, your first speech, in public speech, people start shouting because they think it gives them more credibility. And then lots of patting yourself on the back, things they teach you in press conference 101 that you never do. Don't keep talking about how great you are and how bad the prior administration was, because that's what we kept hearing. This is Trump solved the case. Trump gave us the freedom to do this, as if what some prior president did not. And then, you know, there was no this mantra. There was no new evidence. It was sitting right there. You know, whether it's Gene Pirro or Pam Bondi, it's sitting. The evidence was sitting there all along for 5 years. I got to tell you, Dean, having worked very cold cases myself, I don't believe that for a second. I don't.
Really?
No. And then here comes, so in the order of the press conference, then we see Dan Bongino, deputy director of the FBI, who was apparently very much micromanaging and hands-on, and good for him. Okay. He comes up and what does he say after this mantra of there was no new evidence, there was no new information? He at least twice uses the phrase tip. Then the tip came in. Then the tip came in. And so which is it? Which is it? There was no new information, and you solved this through good sleuthing, or a tip came in. So which was it? And I'm more inclined to believe Bongino when he says a tip came in. But there you have it.
Yeah, it's interesting. It was the clips I saw, I didn't watch the whole thing. It seemed like a Trump cabinet meeting almost, with them getting up there and praising Donald Trump, and he's great. And if he's awake right now, I hope he's watching this. Like they didn't say that. That's wrong. I want to play a couple of short clips. Here's Dan Bongino. We used to fight on Twitter, me and the second guy on the FBI years ago. But it was never like mean spirit. It was sort of like almost joking. I'm like, okay, I get it. This is theater. Let's have some fun type of stuff. Yeah. There were others. Richard Grenell was an asshole. I used to fight with him, and then now he runs the Kennedy Center. So if you fight with me, you'll end up in a Trump administration at some point. So, Aaron, let's play. Here's Dan Bongino, clip number 3, please.
Folks, this is what it's like when you work for a president who tells you to go get the bad guys and stop focusing on other extraneous things not related to law enforcement. This is what happens. We had a great team. I know it's said a lot in this business. It was a team effort. It becomes cliche, but cliches are useful for a reason because they matter. And this was a team effort.
There you
So
go.
Donald Trump said go after the bad guys. That before or after he pardoned a lot of really bad people. I'm not really sure when the went after the bad guys part. When was that, you think, Frank?
Yeah, right. So packaged up in this press conference that should have been an announcement of good news is a whole political message. Right in that clip that you played, it's
Yep.
packed full of the prior administration was doing nothing to go after bad guys. All the things the FBI did were politicized before this, and now we're actually being cops. Even Patel today said this is what happens when you let good cops be cops. He still thinks that FBI agents are cops. Meaning we shouldn't be working spies and terrorists and public corruption. All those people are going to get pardoned. We're just going to chase bombers. And of course, I hate to be sarcastic here, but my God, what's the difference between the pipe bomber and the day later, the insurrection at the Capitol, where some over 1,000 people have been pardoned by Trump for trying to overthrow the goddamn government? And why isn't this guy going to get pardoned? Why should we believe this? That Trump's
Because
not, that 24 hours makes the difference.
if this guy can wire enough money, I think he could get a pardon. I mean, and speaking of Kash Patel, and here I love this lack of self-awareness. I want to play a clip of Kash Patel and listen to the words in this 25-second clip that he uses, Frank, as if we've all forgotten what January 6th was about. Let's hear clip number 2, please.
When you attack
Aaron?
American citizens, when you attack our institutions of legislation, when you attack our nation's capital, you attack the very being of our way of life. And this FBI and this Department of Justice stand here to tell you that we will always refute it and combat it. We will provide the safest country the nation has ever seen under President Trump's leadership here. And that's what we did here today with great resolve.
So institutions of legislation, you mean like Congress?
No, he can't. He
You mean
forgot the
like,
word. He forgot the word Congress. So now it's an institution of legislation. But yes, I mean, it's the insurrection. Is what we're having to talk about when you attack our institutions of legislation. He couldn't get the word Congress out because then people would go, "Oh, you mean January 6th? January 6th was an attack on an institution of legislation." Yeah, but we're not. We let those people go, Dean.
he also at the end there, we're going to have the safest country in the nation. I'm like, what? Where are you from? Like, what level? I'm not mocking you. It's not like I think I'm better than him. We all know we're better than Kash Patel, right? I don't know what he's about. I don't get any of this. By the way, he went on Don Jr.'s podcast afterwards and gave him a long interview, which is a different thing. But I don't know what's going on with the FBI that you used to be a part of and loved and cherished and Americans had a great deal of confidence in now. I have no confidence. The only thing that was interesting is we didn't see the normal spin. I even went to right-wing publications like the New York Post. I thought this guy, Brian Cole, that they arrested was going to turn out to be Antifa or a left-winger or stuff like that. And as of now, we don't see that. And I'm like, what's the play? I mean, why Dan Bongino, who you mentioned, would fuel conspiracy theories about this person, saying, and there was clips all over cable news today where in the past Bongino said that the FBI knew who this guy was. They knew it was probably planted by FBI or planted by a Democrat or some. It was a backup plan. In fact, today Don Jr. was with Kash Patel, and Don Jr. said, this was a backup plan, the bombs. So Dan Bongino out there peddling lies in the past, conspiracy theories, doesn't acknowledge it, nothing. I mean, I don't understand for his own credibility. Like, we're not going to see all the clips on cable news now. I guess Fox won't play them. But I'm not sure what the point of it. Does this help Kash Patel stay in the job after all the bad press about his own girlfriend getting SWAT team protection and flying around on the plane on our dime to go hang out with his girlfriend?
Well, this is another. So I'm glad you brought that up, and I think it's very legit to bring it up because this goes toward the credibility factor of everything you do as a senior leader in government, which is if you're acting out there in a questionable way in your personal life, and the pressure's coming on you, and Congress is asking to investigate your behavior, when you make an announcement like today, seemingly good news announcement, people have to wonder: is it because you pulled this out of a hat because of the pressure that's on the Bureau right now? Because it's been talked about. NBC News reported through sources that they thought Trump was considering replacing him. So you see the importance of being pristine when you're at the top of the nation's law enforcement agency. And that's part of why we all have to wonder if this, and you see where this is interesting. They're saying that the guy's name or the data was sitting there all the time. It was sitting right there, no new evidence. Okay, so you're actually trying to generate a conspiracy theory that the Bureau knew who it was and set on it, right? And now you're saying we figured it out. So you better be careful, because if you're going to promote the conspiracy that this was a cover up of some kind, which again, nonsense, you better be ready to prove it. And so you don't go on mainstream media to do that. You go on Don Jr.'s show and agree with him that this was some kind of a conspiracy.
Yeah, it's kind of remarkable. I'm chatting with Frank Figliuzzi. I don't know what this leads to in the long run, but getting back to the evidence was right there. It still took these guys. I mean, Patel didn't get confirmed right away, but at least 8 or 9 months. So even if they're saying it was so easy of a case, it really wasn't. It wasn't like they went in a month later and they're like, we got the guy's address here. I don't know why no one visited him. You know, what I found interesting is today was the reporting on they had the cell towers. They went to, I was looking at all of this stuff. I'm like, that's very interesting. In the affidavit, 7-page affidavit, they went this painstaking detail. They used cell phone to track his location on the nights the bombs were set, compare it with surveillance footage, a path a would-be bomber would have taken on January 5th, and this kind of stuff. And I'm like, and they looked at credit card records. Please tell us, in the FBI, I would imagine this is day one or right early in the investigation stuff that you would do. It's not like no one at the FBI for 4 years go, what? Cell phone stuff? Man, I never think of that. You're a genius, Kash Patel. That's credit card stuff. I never know.
So
what's going on here?
Great question, because I read the affidavit, and it is bare bones, bread and butter detective work. There's nothing high tech going on here. Tracing cell phone, he's pinging a cell phone in the area of where the bomber, on video, you can see the bomber turn down the street, take a right, take a left, and they do show that the cell phone of the suspect was indeed tracking that cell tower. Yes, indeed. Okay. And so they had his cell phone, not a rocket scientist. If he's carrying his cell phone, that's attributed to him, by the way. Then they show purchase of the end caps and trips to Home Depot that coincide with all the parts, and a kitchen timer and steel wool. All of this found in the bomb materials. So they've got him on bare bone stuff. And you could say, and it would be true, you don't want to put everything you have in an affidavit, because you want to save the good stuff, right? But this is bare bone stuff that I guarantee you, Dean, was done, as you say, day one. Cell phone, credit cards, of course. I've worked 2 major serial bombing cases in my career, and that even in eons ago, that's what we were doing. And so, yeah, there's something more going on here. And the notion that this guy's name and data was just sitting there for 5 years, I'm not buying it. I'm not.
So if there really is a tip, and Dan Bongino, and I didn't watch the whole thing, I'm saying, so I'm glad that you raised that. Where will that come up in terms of the actual case if it gets tried? Will there be some kind of hearings so that what I'm getting at is that the media is going to be alerted to what your ears caught, and I wish they were writing about and pressing Bongino. You said there was a tip. You're saying there's no evidence. Who's this tipper? But is there any chance in the process we will have an opportunity to hear more about that?
Yes, because slowly but surely, as there's, there'll be an initial appearance, arraignment. If it hasn't happened already today, it's going to be tomorrow. Then you're going to start having hearings and motions, and eventually this is going to come out, unless he miraculously pleads guilty, which I don't think he'll do. But the defense will get all of this. And yes, the tip comment from this press conference will be played in trial, if there's a trial, where they go, no new information, and then Bongino gets up and says, we got a tip. The tip came in. So they'll play it, and they may have undermined the case just by that dichotomy right there. And then, where this was done literally very quickly. Remember the case, was it Idaho? With the guy who killed the college kids, right? Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm.
That's the case, is all, but they've got DNA in that case. They got familial DNA in that case, which they got from trash outside his father's house where he was staying. They may have that here, but I'm going to tell you, I don't know, because the controversy inside law enforcement in DC on this case was that the Capitol Police showed up at these sites and they made a decision to use a water cannon to disrupt these devices. The Bureau is anti-water cannon. I can tell you. You know why? Because you wash away your hair fiber and DNA. And that, my sources tell me that this was the cause of consternation inside law enforcement was, oh my God, they washed everything away.
What about, I saw the New York Post, because I was looking at some right-wing publications to see how they were reporting this, because if there was going to be, he was Antifa, I would have seen it there. They didn't report that yet. But they described the guy, Brian Cole, assuming this is correct, very antisocial. A woman who lived nearby since 1991 said he keeps to himself. He has a dog that he loves. He walks the dog every day, twice a day, 7-Eleven with his dog, and he wears his headphones. I'm a little alarmed about this woman's surveillance of this guy. She really knows everything about him. Does this profile tell you anything about him?
Yeah, very generally, bombers tend to be isolated introverts. There are exceptions, but as a general rule, it's one of the most remote crimes you can commit. In fact, the most remote would be a mail bomb, which I had a small piece of the Unabomber case in my career.
Oh, wow.
So that's very remote. And how, of course, did the Unabomber live? In a cabin in Montana with no water. So yeah, he was completely off the grid. So yes, generally, yes. Now, the guy's 30 years old. It's a little young for bombers. But
This is at
yes,
25. I mean, this did this at 25. You would go back 5 years.
I got 30, but yeah,
No, he's 30 now. Or
he's 30 now, but
25.
25. Yeah.
But
Well, okay, so
he's
I'm
25
sorry.
years old.
Of course. So yes, that's young. That's young for a bomber. Mm-hmm.
Unless he almost fits the young male white shooter profile. It's a different overlay. Like a lot of those guys are like in their 20s, and is there something going on in his life then? Because he was bipartisan in this bombing. Like, I mean, we don't have a lot of bipartisanship, but this guy put one in the DNC and the RNC. Like, he's like, both of you suck. And a lot of Americans, like, they do suck. So, okay, fine. Like, if he just put a bomb in front of the RNC, it would have been a different story. DNC would be a different story, right? He does both. So something is going on. And 5 years, look, when you put on your FBI, maybe put on the conspiratorial hat, maybe put them both on. What's going on? I mean, people are going to call in. I already see people calling in saying it doesn't pass the smell test. 5 years later, suddenly, surprise, we got the guy. And it wasn't like people were going around going, I hope they get that guy. I can't sleep at night. Like, no one's talking about this case.
No. So first, I went on quickly on social media today because I started to immediately see disinformation and misinformation on social media about this guy's motive. And it was almost immediate. People calling him an anarchist, far right, far left. And here I had just watched a press conference where the attorney general said, we don't know yet.
Right.
So I went on and posted, be careful, people, because it's already out there. They're trying to mess with our heads. And whether it's foreign powers or not, I have no idea, bots, trolls, but be careful, it's out there. Secondly, I always caution people, do not try to apply logic to lunacy. When you catch up with these bombers, and by the way, the Unabomber was no exception. You sit him down and interview him, and I did not do that interview, but agents that I was assigned with in San Francisco did. And, they said, okay, tell us what's going on. And why did you send a mail? Why did you give a bomb to an executive from American Airlines? Because it's an American Airlines plane that flies over my cabin and bothers me. Oh, okay. Okay. And I'm against technology generally. That's why I live in a cabin and fuel my fire with my own poop. Okay. So all I'm saying is be careful, because this could be something that makes perfect sense to him, but not to any of us.
So we'll find out more. We'll see if this guy makes any statements to the media. We're going to keep our eyes open, and I'm glad you flagged it. Was there a tip? Because they keep saying over and over, there was no new evidence. And you're right, that does, I didn't even think of it. That feeds the conspiracy theory. I certainly fed the idea that Biden, DOJ, wasn't doing their job. They were just hassling Republicans who happened to beat up police officers and were trying to overturn an election to keep Trump in power despite losing. How dare the FBI and DOJ focus on that kind of stuff? This guy who loves his dog was scaring all of us, apparently. So we're going to see how this plays out. We're going to keep our eyes. You mentioned about lunacy, not trying to figure out what's going on. just a week ago, we had 2 National Guard soldiers shot. One died. The story's gone. Like, the story is, they couldn't figure. We had Kristi Noem and Trump saying a lie what it was about. Like, it was about Afghanistan, or others saying it was Muslim and all that. And then Kristi Noem saying one thing, and then officially saying, we don't know why. And then we know that he was trained by the CIA, and the story's just gone. I don't know what happens in our nation. I think that's like a kind of a big story, and I don't understand for the life of me. And that's not just the corporate media stuff. If Trump was talking about it more, they would cover it more. The whole just moved on. That's it.
So the easy answer, of course, is the goddamn 24-hour news cycle that really shapes all of this. It's horrible. And that's why you and me on Substack and other platforms really get a chance to keep a story alive and dig into it. Secondly, it's an embarrassment for Trump to keep bringing this up. So, for example, I talked about why isn't our flag flying at half-staff to honor Sarah Beckstrom and her sacrifice when we put a flag at half-mast for a podcaster who was killed. I don't get that. My answer? It's too embarrassing to focus on her and her sacrifice because Trump put her there. And the data indicates it wasn't necessary to do. And she died at the hands of a man that was granted asylum by Donald Trump. Too embarrassing to actually have the flag fly at half-mast for her.
That's a great point. And that's something I covered on the show, and I wrote a Substack about it and covered it on the show and talked about those 2 factors. And the third being the CIA part of it. And you know what? I read international publications, BBC and The Guardian and others, and there's so many of their headlines are about CIA-trained killer. Like, they gravitate to CIA the same way we would gravitate to an article on FSB, which is the former KGB, or intelligence service in another country. And not to say they were involved in this, but when the CIA trains as a killer, he was in a human right. He was in a zero unit.
Zero unit. They were
death squads. Like, they were terrible. And And I read in the UK paper that he was a co-commando leader. If that's true or not, I don't know. It's not been confirmed by the US. But Frank, let me just ask you one quick thing, and then answer any way you want. But John Ratcliffe, CIA director, confirmed the guy had worked with the CIA within hours of the shooting. I'm like, I don't remember that happening that swiftly. So the point was, there were so many ties to him, it was undeniable. So they thought it was easier. Yep, he worked with us at one point. We got to say,
and listen, I agree. And if there's any credit to Ratcliffe at all, it's getting it out and get on top of it, because they know it would have developed into some secret conspiracy theory. Right, but yes, the zero unit kinetic action actors trained. Don't know this for sure, but likely that he's killed people, and then making the PTSD story, which his family is saying, by the way, that he suffered from PTSD because of his combat experience, and that who put him there? We did. And so you may not like to hear this out there, but we do own some of this. We say the good news: we bring you home and your family, and thank you for your service. Bad news: have a nice day. And we don't follow up. And that's something we've got to start looking at.
I had veterans call in and make that very point a few nights ago on Monday, I guess, when we came back from the holidays, who veterans said, they bring us in the military and they train us. They train us to kill. And then we go out there and some of us do that. And then when your service is over, it's like, thank you for your service. And you can go to the VA if you need help, but barring that, as opposed to a formalized program. And someone else was calling in saying that there was something they got, but that not like a formalized program to return you to society as a way that, as opposed to the, honorable discharge and thank you. And if you need help, we have a VA for you, that kind of stuff. And it made sense. I've never served, so I don't know, but it sounded good from the outside. I'm not sure from the inside.
No, reportedly his family's saying he was suffering financially, couldn't hold a job, increasingly isolated, which is all the hallmarks, by the way, of someone who is about to act out violently, this disappearing act that happens. And that there should be there should be something that triggers re-engagement with the government. It's how can we help you? What can we do right now? That, if veterans think they get short shrift, can you imagine a foreign national who we bring here and what little we offer them?
I agree. I'm talking with Frank Figliuzzi. A couple other things I want to get your opinion on. First, we have Donald Trump pardoning people, including the former head of Honduras, Hernandez, who was involved in dumping, according to the Department of Justice, he was at the center of one of the largest, most violent drug trafficking conspiracies in the world. Some 400 tons of cocaine. Tons, as I mentioned yesterday, it's 800,000 pounds. There's about 350 million grams of coke in our nation. And I went through yesterday that the spike in cocaine overdoses that match up pretty well with this massive dump of cocaine from 2014 to 2022. But you have that, and then yesterday Trump pardons a guy his own DOJ investigated, Timothy Lewicki, who was, about bribes and rigging a contract and getting $1 million contract. And out of the blue, he is someone they actually prosecuted, his own DOJ. How does this affect morale? How does this have an impact on FBI agents, DOJ? Like, how hard are you going to work if the person's a Republican or well-connected, powerfully, and wealthy, and they might get a pardon?
So we are well over 1,600 pardons just in this Trump term alone. Even if you took away the January 6th related pardons, I think we're at over 150 that have nothing to do with January 6th. That's way too many pardons of way too many guilty people. And so while everything is transactional with Trump, and you've got to think, my God, if you're pardoning the former president of Honduras, who is likely responsible for the deaths, and you said this, Dean, the deaths of an equivalent number, more people than died in September 11th. This guy's responsible for killing Americans with dope, and you've let him go. And it was our U.S. federal government that prosecuted him. What is the transaction that's occurring here, and why? And his response to the media on that question was, my friends asked me to. Well, I've got more questions. What kind of friends do you have? And I've said that some journalist someday is going to get a Pulitzer Prize for figuring out what the quid pro quo was to do this. And it could be in his deluded mind that anybody going after any president has got it wrong. You can't possibly, anything a president does is right and official, and you can't come after him. But then you look at Representative Cuellar from Laredo, Texas, a Democratic Congress member who he pardoned also for bribery charges.
Blue.
Yeah,
Out of the blue. It's not, the guy wasn't even, he was not convicted. Neither the guy yesterday who was charged a year ago, but charged months ago by his own DOJ, or the congressmen were convicted. They could have won the case on motions. They could have went to a jury and been acquitted. He did this early. Like,
if it's transactional, it's hoping that Cuellar would flip if pardoned and become a Republican and run as a Republican. Cuellar's already said he's not going to do that. So Trump may regret this, but on the larger level, Dean, the only conclusion I have is it's death by 1,000 cuts to our justice system. That Trump is hell bent on eroding anything that's left of justice and the rule of law, and it's a revenge tour in that regard.
Yeah, I guess if you take a step back and really look at people who are truly through history tyrants or want to be aspiring tyrants, fascists, whatever side they're on politically, if they want to end the system, you have to get people not to believe in the system anymore. And then it's easier for them to be king because you go like, well, that person's king, and what are we going to do about it? That's life. And I mean, for these pardons, we might find out that there were direct infusions of money. They might find out there were other things given in kind. We don't even know. And the way the Supreme Court in U.S. versus Trump last year, and Justice Sotomayor point blank in her dissent, the idea of take a bribe in exchange for pardons, immune. And that's a compelling argument, and if Trump knows it. But the last thing I wanted to touch on something you've been flagging, the scapegoating of Admiral Bradley in the murder of civilians on the boats of Venezuela. In fact, today, I believe Bradley is on Capitol Hill. And some Democrats saying they were really troubled by what they saw. And Republicans came out and said, everything's fine. We're all vindicated. What's going on here?
This is a cover-up in the making that we're watching in real time. That's my takeaway. That first, don't forget, the first admiral in the picture, who is the admiral in charge of Southcom out of Miami, Florida, that handles the Caribbean and these cases. He left his position and retired early. And now what are we learning about his motive in retiring early? That he had serious legal questions about what he was being asked to do in the Caribbean. Number one. Number two, here comes Admiral Bradley, a Navy SEAL admiral over special ops. And he's the one whose folks are pulling the trigger on these vessels. Which, by the way, that's something that we've learned, that this is SEAL Team 6 doing this. And isn't it ironic that you remember the infamous Supreme Court argument where they kept asking the Solicitor General of the U.S., this is on the case of presidential authority, right? Can the president order SEAL Team 6 to kill his enemies? Well, guess what? It's happening in the Caribbean. And it's SEAL Team 6 pulling the trigger. And now, Hegseth goes from saying, I never gave a kill everyone order, to saying it's Admiral Bradley, and I stand by him 100% while I stab him in the back. And now it's Bradley saying there wasn't a kill everyone order, but rather it was dismantle the vessel, and I thought they were a threat, and they could upright the vessel. They could upright the vessel that you just blew up and become a threat to you. These are not hostile combatants. We are not at war, and so it is actually too polite to call this a war crime, because that implies you're at war. And so the only other thing to call it would be murder.
Mm-hmm. I agree with you, and it's something that some legal experts have noted. I put in an article, I talked about on my show. Others have flagged it. We are not in armed conflict, despite what Donald Trump has to say. Well, Frank, but where can people follow you? Where do you want them to follow your work? Because I know you're always doing stuff on Substack, because I subscribe, so I see notifications all the time.
Yeah, thank you. So the Frank Figliuzzi on Substack. I'd love your support in the form of either paid or unpaid subscriptions. I'm just about getting away from mainstream media and getting into the story behind the story. I've got a website, frankfigliuzzi.com. I'm on Instagram and Blue Sky and Threads, and I'm very appreciative of everybody's support.
And support Frank. He's doing great stuff. I think it's interesting that you and Glenn Kirshner, you guys are friends, both same thing, have made this exit from corporate media. And we're seeing more and more of people going to independent media to be able to speak freely about issues that we're all confined a little bit in corporate media. Independent media, it's whatever you want to do. I mean, as long as you're being responsible. So, yeah. But thank you, Frank. Happy holidays to you and your family. And I look forward to chatting in the future.